I call the meeting to order.
Just in time.
We will start with a roll call. We have Steve Whitman, Jack Scarborough, Bonnie Sears, myself, Rebecca Hansen, John Ranlett, Chris Buckley, Marianne Barnsley, and Bridget Powers. I always forget somebody, but I know you are. Did I say? Oh, and Bridget is not here this evening. And so, Steve, I invite you to both participate as a full member, so you can vote and make motions.
Okay.
Let's review the minutes from our work session on November 1st. I have one correction. I wrote it on the other copy that I had. It was, does anyone else have any other corrections while I hunt out my?
It might be the same one you have on page 3. Was it that far in?
I don't remember.
The first bullet point on that page in the second sentence, Mr. Murphy made reminder. Wouldn't that, I think that to me sounded awkward if not confusing, and I thought maybe Mr. Murphy reminded the board. Ms. Sears. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
All right, mine was under, number 2 in new business, the discussion on the procedure for lapsed site plan review in the first bullet point. The last sentence says that clarification was made that the applicant requests an extension for up to 3 years. I don't believe that's what our site plan regulations say. I believe they say they can make, after that first year, they can get a 1-year extension, and after that, it's at the discretion of the board. Any other questions or comments, or perhaps a motion regarding these minutes?
I make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second?
So we're approving them as amended? All those in favor of approving the minutes as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Oh, thank you.
Abstain as well.
There are 5 of us.
Two abstentions.
2 abstentions, yep. Okay, so moving on to new business. One of the applications we will not be reviewing. They've withdrawn their application this evening. That is the 4-lot subdivision from the parent parcel for Locomotive LLC owner at 32 Railroad Square. So we will move right on to site plan approval on PID number 212-046 Riverside Landing, 33 Sleeper Hill Road, Guilford, through Agent Will Davis of Horizons Engineering for the construction of a grocery store with associated utilities, parking areas, and related site improvements through his agent Kevin French, parcel lies in the agricultural zone.
Madam Chair. Bonnie's.
Oh, jeez.
Just getting comfortable.
I forgot. Okay. I have to accuse myself. I'm in a butter.
Because she's not butter. Thank you.
So Bonnie is recusing herself because she's in the
Yes.
butter.
Okay, I'll be back.
We'll keep the chair warm, don't worry.
Okay, so this is the public hearing, so just to walk everyone through this procedure really quickly, I'm sure the applicant is aware of how we do this, but we do have a large crowd here this evening. So I will invite the applicant to give a brief presentation on the project. The board will then ask any questions about the completeness of the application. And then we will determine whether or not the application is complete. At that point, we will decide whether or not we want to hold our discussion about this project as whether or not it's a development of regional impact at that point, or if we want to make it after the public hearing. I want to have a board conversation about that. So we'll make that determination and either have that conversation before or after the public hearing. The public hearing will invite people to come and speak up in favor of, against, or a general nature about this specific project. Our bylaws do state that our speakers must I can only speak for 3 minutes at a time. I'm not a big fan of a tight timeline like that. But if I do feel like this is gonna be, go on for most of the evening, then I will start, enforcing time. So after that point, then the conversation will come back to the board, where we'll make a judgment on this case, so. Okay,
All right. Hello, everyone. For the record, my name is Will Davis. I'm with Horizons Engineering. Good to see you all again. Here tonight representing Mike McGinley and Riverside Landing for the Market Basket application. I think he's really excited to bring this Market Basket to Plymouth, and so I hope we can get through what we need to get approved tonight. I'd like to just give you a brief overview of the plans, and then we can go over any questions you may have. The first sheet is just it's a rendering of the So this is a straight-on view from Tenny Mountain Highway. This would be what you would see if you were looking from the Tedeschi's Irving area, and then this one would be if you were looking from McDonald's. So there's an entry here and entry here. This is a 69,000 square foot building. So I'll skip over I guess, is everyone pretty well oriented to the site? We don't need to go over that, okay. So we were here conceptually with the same layout plan. I can go over, there's some more detail now on the layout. 324 parking spaces.
one second, Will. We need to keep it oriented because it needs to be facing the board. If there's, I'm afraid that Steve won't be able to see it if we turn it anymore.
He can have mine. Sir? Thank you. You're welcome.
Let's just leave it where it is for now so we can proceed, and then we can give people time if they need to come up and look a little closer.
How's that? Is that better? All right.
Don't lean back.
Does that work?
Yeah.
I'm gonna sit right in somebody's lap here.
You can turn it more if you need to see it. I can see mine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's better.
Well, now I can't see it, so I guess I got to move a little bit. Sorry. Okay, so we have 324 parking spaces for the 69,000 square foot building. A large section in the front, and then parking along the sides, and a few spaces in the back. And we've provided, as we discussed before, the pedestrian connectivity here. So you know, across the site we have interior connectivity. There's sidewalks from here, crosswalk, and then in front of the hotel. It continues in front of the liquor store, and then this project will be picking that up and heading across with crosswalk here, sidewalks in front of the store, and then a crosswalk down. Part of the conceptual discussion we had, the board requested the addition of a sidewalk out to Tenny Mountain here, which we've added down to the edge of the proposed driveway. There's an entrance right here so this is the main driveway that was approved as part of the Irving project. Nothing's changing with the geometry of the driveway. It was all set up for both uses together. So there's a turn lane in. People can take a quick turn in the parking lot, or can continue down and come in front of the store and access the parking that way. And on the way out, if it's double loaded, you can take a right or a left out of there. All of the access ways and the driveway are set up for WB67, the large tractor trailers that will be seeing deliveries in the rear at a series of loading docks in the back. The new site will interface with the existing parking and circulation here. So this road obviously will continue. The liquor store will be connected here and in the back. And then Irving will be connected here through their rear driveway area. So this will kind of be the final puzzle piece for the overall development to provide vehicular and pedestrian circulation throughout. I think I can move on to grading and drainage. As we've talked about, this project, will, like others, will require an alteration of terrain permit, which we are preparing to apply for. The grading in the front here will essentially appear flat. It's going to be, it'll have 2% grades to get drainage to catch basins. And as you move towards the rear of the site, it drops down about 4 feet in the back for the loading docks. So that allows the trucks to basically back up right to the finished floor elevation. So as you move along each side, it goes down about 4 feet from front to back. And these grades at the liquor store are matching. This one, you'll come up a little bit to get into the rear parking lot, and this one you'll actually go down a little bit to tie in. But you know, the grades are relatively soft in here. Drainage is collected by catch basins and pipes, similar to what we've been doing on previous iterations of the project. So we'll be going to a tanked water quality unit for pre-treatment prior to a chamber system for detention and infiltration. And everything will be meeting the state rules for that. We'll have one larger system in the front parking area that'll take the roof and most of the parking, and then there's an additional smaller system in the back that'll take the side areas and the rear, because since they're all sloping down that way. We'll also be continuing the previously approved plan of development for the floodplain compensation area, which we've talked about. The reinforced slope will continue around, so that'll be geotechnical design, reinforced stone line slope that is within that pad that we've been working on so far. We can move on to utilities here. Next sheet. So the existing water and sewer mains are out front. We'll be tying in with the water main, an 8-inch loop around the back of the building that'll connect to the 12-inch that's out in front of the building. And then we'll have 2 water services in the back, one for fire suppression, which will be an 8-inch, and then we'll have a 4-inch domestic service right here in the back. Mechanical rooms in this area, so we'll have sewer coming out of this side. There'll be 2 sewer services, one for the food prep, the kitchen area, which will be routed to a grease trap, and then the standard domestic will go into a manhole after the grease trap, and then we'll head down here and then out the way everything else goes now. Underground electric is served to this point right now in preparation for the Irving construction, which is currently under construction. This project will come off of that electric vault, and we'll have another transformer with a backup generator pad next to it, and then the services will come in the back. Communications will follow the same routing with the pedestal back there, and then communications will come in that side of the building. Next sheet I have here is the landscaping, which I believe was the last sheet of your set, but the rest of them are construction details. So this is the one that I just wanted to go over briefly. Landscaping, we have proposing a row of maples here between McDonald's and the parking lot. Out in front, We'll have a series of maples as well with some perennial plantings along that slope by the highway. Interior to the site, the islands will have a variety of combination of perennials and crab apples and a variety of locust that's good for road type planting. So hardy trees that'll survive this kind of environment. There's some plantings along the side here of the building as well. I believe those are dogwoods and perennials. Similarly, we have some plantings here, and then there's a buffer between the liquor store and the parking, in which we're proposing some more columnar type maples that are not as big, so that they can exist near the building there. So that is the quick tour.
Have there been a conversation about syringas?
I'm sorry?
Syringas?
Syringas.
Yes.
I have not heard a conversation about syringas.
At the zoning board?
Okay. I was not at the zoning for this hearing, for the special exception.
Well, not for this special exception, no, but just in general, to put it out to you that
think
it had been talked about.
Jack, we talked about that at the last meeting with the co-op guy, as something that was a good
Yes,
thing to
you're
go
right.
under
I'm
power
sorry.
lines, which it
Yes.
doesn't seem like that's as much of an issue
No, it
there, so,
doesn't.
yeah.
No, you're right. I apologize.
Okay.
Overstepped.
So I think now, any questions from the board about the completeness of this application? Or if there are no questions, maybe a motion.
Move to accept as complete.
Second.
All those in favor to accept this application as complete?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay. So now I just want to bring it back to the board quickly to talk about the development of regional impact. We've all gotten some paperwork about that. We've had a couple discussions about what that means. It's something we need to vote on as a board to determine that. I'd like to leave it up to the board whether or not we vote for that at this point, or if we want to get through the public hearing and then decide if we're going to determine whether this is a development of regional impact. I guess I'll just leave it at that.
I would think we'd just wait and do that at the end. Go ahead and get the public hearing taken care of and discuss
I
it.
would present a different alternative, which is if we think it meets the merit of a regional impact because of the size of the development and its location, that I don't know what we'll learn at the public hearing that may change that. It's not going to change the character of the development or its location, but I'm happy to go with whatever the board decides.
If we decide this has regional impact and we alert our abutters, that pushes this thing out a couple weeks, right?
Yes.
So I would say we should discuss that first, because I think that probably would pertain to the public, who might want to comment on that.
So I think if we want to open it up for the public to discuss it, then we have the vote after. If we have the vote now, that means we're not opening that part of it up to the public discussion.
No, but maybe the public should, I was thinking we could discuss it so the public would know. I was just wondering if this is something we could dispatch pretty quickly. Does it meet the standards? And if it does, it needs to be explained to me, because
Yeah.
it doesn't, I don't see where it has the kind of regional impact that we would need to alert.
It is
I agree.
pertinent to the town of Plymouth.
Yep.
So, but what I want to do is I don't want to just, I want to determine whether or not we're going to discuss it now first. And then we'll go through it point by point. There's a whole structure that the Lakes Region Planning Commission has set forth for us to, yes or no questions. And then we can walk through that together and then take a vote. So it seems like there's some difference in opinion about whether we vote for it now or later. I think my concern is if we vote for it later, the conversation during the public hearing is going to be perhaps more dominated by this idea of the development of regional impact. I don't know if that's good or bad. However, I want to be clear with the concept of the development of regional impact. This is not a move to slow down any development or anything. This is a way of making sure that we are following the letter of the law and protecting ourselves as a town from a potential lawsuit, because that is something that has happened as well. So,
Why don't we go ahead and chairman's wish?
I don't want to have to make all the decisions.
All right, let's
I
go
offered
ahead and
my
discuss
opinion,
it
you shut
now,
me down.
okay?
I think that's fair.
All right.
You had your opinion, but it was not the opinion the opinion on the topic I was looking for. I welcome everybody's opinion. So, can I just have a quick show of hands who wants to discuss this? I mean, we're discussing it, but who wants to go through the criteria now? Okay, that was easy. All right. Woo! I have about 4 copies of it, but of course. It is.
Does the gentleman have to stand at the podium? When he's sick?
Can you relax?
Sorry, Will.
I'll just be standing here.
You're welcome to continue standing at the podium. You're also welcome to, yeah.
Do you have another copy of that, of what you're going through? Or?
Sure, well.
4 of them.
We might have 4 or 5. So if we can actually just scatter them around the room if necessary. I know that there is,
What are we looking
I
for?
just had like 3 copies. The LRPC, this one here.
I think I have an extra one right here.
LRPC.
I'll make sure I give you the same one. This is one here, Will. Yeah. Thank you. Yep.
Okay, so we're in the Lakes Region Planning Commission document. On page 4, it is the checklist for determining developments of regional impact. Okay. School impacts. Will the development create significant new student population affecting a regional school district?
What part are you on?
Page
Oh,
4.
I see this.
I'm going through
It's
the
in
Lakes Region
It's
Planning
in the back,
Commission.
it's in
On
the
the
back
backside.
section.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay. I was looking at the list of determining on page 3, but
Oh. So will the development create a significant new student population affecting a regional school district?
doesn't appear to.
No.
Will the development cause an increase in traffic that will diminish the capacity or safety of the road system in the adjacent municipality or potentially affected regional traffic patterns?
I would say potentially yes.
Right.
It's a big increase in traffic.
So we have some yeses and we have some nos.
I would say if you drive 25 right now, you'll see a very heavy level of traffic, and it seems to work.
But if it's heavy now and we're adding all these cars,
Are we?
So I think the question is, we're adding, I would think that yes, we're gonna add road cars to 25, but is it gonna impact the adjacent community? I think at this point, we're talking about Rumney.
And I don't see heavy traffic I mean, certainly Tenny Mountain itself, but once you get out, past that traffic circle, I never find 25 very heavily.
do you want to call number 2 maybe for now?
I
And
was,
just keep
yeah, I
moving?
just checked yes and no.
So just for some clarification, it says the road system in adjacent municipalities, which I don't think, or potentially affect regional traffic patterns. Does that include Tenny Mountain as well? Or out further?
I think regional traffic patterns, I interpret that as, I mean, it could be 93, it could be
Romney, Hogan.
25, it could be 3A,
Right.
So not the exact location, if you will, but out further?
out further, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. I may change mine to no then.
Change yours to
No.
no, okay. Will proposed buildings or number of dwelling units impact neighborhoods or areas in a neighborhood, neighboring municipality?
No.
Will the development create visual impacts to neighboring municipalities such as light pollution or glare, visibility of structures, adverse impacts on scenic vistas?
No.
Maybe.
Yes.
In
Potentially.
what way? I mean, the lighting goes off at
The
night.
lighting's gonna be required to be downlit,
But after they close, lights go out
Lights go out.
completely. so-
If that becomes a condition of the
They're going
site
on
plan.
timers.
If that becomes a condition of the site plan. But right now, we're adding a lot of lights to that location. This is one of the reasons I believe Walmart was deemed a regional impact.
Well,
That's because of
Walmart
light
has
impact.
different lighting, too. They
These
don't-
guys are proposing.
They don't have the
timed
dome.
Hang on a sec, guys. I'm gonna
Sorry.
just ask you to speak one at a time here. So I think, John, you were
I don't think Walmart has the dark sky lighting, which this Market Basket will. And again, I think they've stated that their policy is after the store closes, the lights are off anyway, so.
And can I make a
please.
comment? Certainly, there'll be a light impact, but if we're talking about for a neighboring municipality, do you think that'll affect
Right.
Rumney?
Hampton?
Hampton.
It is a lot lower than the Walmart site. So the spread,
Yeah.
to the direct line of sight to the lights
Right.
is pretty restricted, and we do have a ridge line to the north.
Campton,
Can't. Well, it's Plymouth until, yeah.
right. I'm thinking of those folks that are looking down on it, but I can roll with it.
All right,
So we say no?
I have a maybe, I think. I think there's,
I would, again, just like to voice, based on what I've heard from zoning board discussions, that they're going to put all their lighting on timers. And that 30 minutes after the store is closed, the lights go out. So
And
I don't see an impact.
okay. I guess I feel like, and you did include there is a lighting plan in our packet, so
Well, and I would just say he's correct, the lights will be going off after it closes.
thank you.
I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to be involved in this.
It's at the discretion of the chair, so.
Well, just, if you have questions.
All right.
subject to flogging.
Yeah. I do have a gavel. Does the development propose the operation of a facility or business that would generate excessive air pollution, wastewater discharge, noise, or hazardous waste transport?
No?
I would say no.
Other than parking lot runoff was,
We'll address that, I believe, at number 6.
okay.
Right.
Hopefully, the runoff is not hazardous waste transport, but,
Salt.
well. Number 6, will the development occur on or adjacent to known aquifers or surface waters that transcend municipal boundaries?
Yes.
Yes. Will the development require a major impact wetland permit from New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services?
It has, hasn't it?
Is it a major wetland permit? Sorry, I am now acknowledging you.
Tune back in. Right.
I wasn't involved in the initial project. I didn't involve
I think it's gotta be just this project, though, because if it's the
This project
pad,
does
Right.
the pad's already been approved and done, so it's this
Yes.
project
This project does
specifically.
not involve any wetlands.
Okay, thank you. Does the project involve permitting for a large groundwater withdrawal? No. Will the development cause negative impacts to another municipality's municipal water supply?
No.
Does the development abut existing conservation lands or existing farmlands such that the coordination between municipalities could lead to the creation or preservation of greenways, wildlife habitat areas, or prevent fragmentation of forests, farms, or other conservation areas? Not anymore.
Right.
Check.
Yeah. Does the development propose the creation of business or industry that would significantly impact regional economic development?
Would you repeat that?
Say that again, please?
Sorry, I'm starting to read faster as the list seems like it's getting longer and longer. Does the development propose the creation of business or industry that would significantly impact regional economic development?
Yes.
Well, it,
360 new
Yeah.
employees.
yeah,
It's interesting, it doesn't say whether the impact would be positive or negative.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
That's an ambiguous question.
right, because
Yeah.
it would be.
And I don't know how an answer of yes could possibly be viewed in the negative.
Right. That's, maybe we could just tell LRPC that one's confusing.
Right.
Does the proposal create significant increased demand for emergency services response, including mutual aid from neighboring municipalities?
I don't
None
think, I don't think it would with what you
exists
currently have
already.
out there, and
My only question would be about the sheer size of the building.
Oh,
It's
if
nearly
there were-
2 acres of building. I think that's probably more, if there was an incident, which there shouldn't be, and it sounds like they have all the right stuff installed, but it seems like something that mutual aid would be required.
Well,
Oh.
Mutual aid,
Well, if
mutual
you-
aid agreements are already in place.
if you look at the capability, if you look at the capability of the equipment and everything that we have, the
Yep.
ladders and everything, I don't think,
I don't think.
I think it's a significant increased demand, and I don't think we're talking about one catastrophic event. I think we're talking about just general, increased demand. That's how I interpret that. I would say no, but I don't know.
I don't know. I manage the 911 system, and I would see this as no major impact to my requirement as a manager. So I don't see an impact.
I would say no.
It's not a bigger load.
But it certainly has the potential if
It has
something
potential
happened,
if there's something catastrophic,
right?
but that could be town hall exploding.
But also,
It
if
doesn't
you,
have to be that much, sorry. It doesn't have to be that large.
no, because I think if you look at the annual police calls to Walmart and other box stores in town,
That's a
bad
good
checks,
point.
shoplifting, emergencies.
Sure.
Hey,
It does increase, whether they require mutual aid, I have no way of knowing.
but I think you've got, you've got a different business there too, where you're talking groceries and cooked food, prepared food and stuff versus clothing and, sporting
I think-
goods. I would not, I wouldn't see that myself, but, I mean, I'm sure Market Basket, they look like they have a pretty efficient process, and where Walmart, they have stocking and stuff at night where there's no customers. Market Basket, somebody's on every aisle all the time. So, I mean, I think it's their security and their preparation, kind of alleviates somebody, going out the back door or something like that, which they did have a lot of problems. I used to work at Walmart. They had a lot of problems with that.
I just wonder if this is one of those that we can't answer, that we need
Yeah.
professionals from
Yeah,
town
I
to
mean,
weigh on.
we could contact the chief and see how he feels.
It's very rare for the police, other than in these operations that are going on throughout the state, not related to theft, I'll leave it at that. It's more on the fire side, where the mutual aid is. I mean, and all the agreements are in place, but I don't know that for thefts or incidents related to a retail establishment like a grocery store would probably be standard and not more attractive, like John was saying, but because Walmart has a lot more stealable stuff, and it's kind of hard to walk out with a roast under your coat. But, I'm not saying that there is no loss, but I think the incidence of it in grocery stores is a lot less than it is in
I think that's in
Hard to
general, just a big
retail.
question mark that I think we're doing a lot of speculating.
Right.
So I've just put a question mark next to that one. I'm going to move on to number 10. Historic or cultural resources. Will the proposed development have negative impacts on historic or cultural resources that may have significance regionally?
No.
I would say no.
Does the Baker River Valley count as a cultural resource?
And how is it going to
In
impact
debate
the
with
Baker?
them
Oh, will it
to-
be impacted?
Yeah.
if you're spending time on the Baker River behind the store? I'm asking the question, I don't know
We're in
the
debate
answer.
to ask those people to enable public to access the Baker River.
Right, but this
through
is
that
only,
property.
would this qualify for regional impact? Because then it's larger than just the town of Plymouth.
Town of Plymouth.
I think
Okay.
one of the things we have to remember as we go through this, if there was a development of this size in the nearby community, would we, as a planning board, want to be notified?
Okay. So we all said yes to number 6, right?
Right.
Findings of yes, and this is what it says at the top of this list, on one or more of the items below indicates the need for a local land use board to determine that the development proposal results in possible regional impacts.
That's a self-licking ice cream cone.
So, I'd like to get to a vote. Any other further discussion?
Just that we had that one yes, and we had probably 2 maybes. Some of the others, it seemed like we switched over to no.
And I would like to just reiterate again, this is not a trying to hold something back. This is just making sure we're doing this to its completeness and doing our due diligence as a board, so. All right, are we ready to vote? Any other comments, questions? Need to review this further.
On the ground, the surface or groundwater impacts, we know with the containment system that Will has told us about, we know it's for sure that it's gonna have an impact.
But this doesn't say that, Chris. It just says, will the development occur on or adjacent to known aquifers and surface waters that transcend municipal boundaries? And I think that way, the other communities who may be impacted down the river, or if the aquifer transcended municipal boundaries, which I don't know if it does or doesn't, they would have an opportunity to weigh in and to ask questions and to understand the design and what we may approve. That's my understanding of it.
Right. It's an opportunity for them to comment in the same way that we invite abutters to come into, or notice them as an abutter, basically, as an abutting town.
You know, it seems to me that the way these are worded, there's no way to avoid a yes on the entire thing. Because it's adjacency, it's not on the river, it's hundreds and hundreds of feet away. It is adjacent to the aquifer there, but is it a usable aquifer? No, but it is an aquifer, so, you know, by definition, it should be included. But, you know,
Hang on a second, Brian. I'm gonna, Jack, just,
Was the the aquifer for Plymouth, how would it impact the others?
I don't know if it would. I said I don't
Yeah.
know.
See, and when I think that was the question, some other community, yeah, it would be close enough to affect the town of Plymouth, but, I mean,
Well, we
I
could
don't know.
do an aquifer study to determine that, or we could just call it a
Right.
regional impact to move
Yeah.
on.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think it's the surface waters more
It's
than
even
the
bigger.
aquifer. I don't think it's an aquifer
Okay.
problem. I think
Yeah.
it would be surface waters. So I guess one question, if this was the Irving Station, would we even be having this conversation? Because the Irving Station is so small.
I mean, it's 4,000 square feet versus 69,000 square
So-
feet. So the increase in impervious surfaces is pretty significant
Many
between the two.
acres.
Yeah.
So I think that goes back to your comment, Brian, about it would be hard not to answer yes to all of these. I think depending on what we were discussing, right? Like if it was the Irving Station,
Correct.
right? And I guess my concern, I wish is there some way we could, like this sort of, it could be built into the process so we could alert, if there's a big project, we just alert abutting towns earlier in the process, like it's
It
an
can-
automatic
It can get
thing.
triggered earlier, but ultimately it's a board decision. So if it comes across Brian and he says this is definitely a development of regional impact, he can notice those towns, this is how I'm understanding it, right away, when the application is received. We have to give towns 14 days. So I think the timing of it gets a little tricky to try and get everything done in one meeting. I think we're making this maybe too much of a big deal, because I think that this is something we need to consider with every application that comes in front of us. This is the biggest application we've seen since I've been on the board by far. I think this is a great discussion to have. So realistically, vote yes, and the majority votes yes and says that this is a development of regional impact as determined by the board, given the knowledge that we have right now. We will continue the public hearing to our next public hearing, which is on December 20th. Because I think the way the timing works is we wouldn't be able to get to it before our work session on, I think I don't think there are 2 weeks in between. There's 2 weeks in between now and our next meeting, right? Okay. So there's just not enough time to notice it, yeah.
Is there any reason, if it's determined a regional impact, and the notices go out, I guess, tomorrow, I don't, if you have the time, then we would have feedback from the regional planning commissions and any towns, and they'd be able to attend that meeting. But is there any reason why we can't hear more from the applicant tonight?
I mean, I think I plan on continuing the
Oh, okay.
public hearing for sure, because people have come specifically for this, so.
Exactly. I didn't
yeah.
want to, I wasn't sure if you were saying that we could. we were gonna stop.
No, I definitely want to have a public hearing, because,
We're
If
using
I'm-
the word
if I may-
continue, kind of.
yeah.
If I may,
Yes.
I, again, want to reiterate my point that I do not believe it is regional. It impacts the town of Plymouth.
Okay, I think, do we want to take a vote?
Yeah.
Okay. All those, do we have to do a motion to do this? Of course we do. Who let me sit up here?
I'll make a motion. Would that help?
Yes.
Okay.
You're empowered.
I would make a motion that we consider whether or not this is a regional impact. And then do we want to do a yes, no vote?
Is that, I've never done this before. That's how we can do it?
Well, I don't
that
want to
way?
sway it by saying what I think it should be at the start of the motion.
Right. Okay.
I think the motion would be, do we consider this of regional impact?
I'll second that motion.
Are you comfortable making that
I'll
motion?
go ahead and make it.
That was good.
Okay, so the motion on the table is, do we consider this a development of regional impact? All those in favor?
What are we, is it,
That should
so
be a
basically
yes.
to rephrase that, we're voting on whether or not we feel this is a regional impact.
Right.
And I vote will say, I believe this is a development of regional impact.
Right.
Okay. So, the motion on the table, do we consider this a development of regional impact?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
No?
Okay.
Chris, did you vote?
I did, I voted aye.
Aye, okay, thank you.
So we're 4-2, which is the biggest difference in a vote that I've ever seen since I've been on this board, so it's very exciting. Thank you, everyone, for your comments.
Yeah.
And I think that this is where the important stuff happens, is where we bring our differences of opinions together, and I'm not just saying that because my vote won, but, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so anyway, are there any other questions for the applicant before I open this up to a public hearing?
I guess I have a bunch of questions on the actual site plan, but I'm happy to hold them till later.
Do you want to hold them for the?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think if there are people
Some of
here
them-
that want to comment. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to open this up to a public hearing in just a moment. Again, our bylaws state that comments need to be limited to 3 minutes. I'm not going to start timing them unless they seem to be really long, just to make sure everyone gets a chance to speak. The applicant is here and can ask any answer questions, I believe. But everything needs to get directed through me. So if you have questions, we can't have side conversations during the public hearing. And when I open the public hearing, one by one, people can come forward, stand at the podium, state your name. It's helpful to know if you're in a butter. if you're a Plymouth resident. And I think our bylaws state that although, letting people speak in favor and then opposed and then of a general nature. So,
Can I just ask one question?
yes, please.
So, we can probably discuss it later, but in terms of the continuing, there's 3 weeks between now and the work session. It would be great if we could do it, if we could notice it tomorrow and continue it to the 6th. Instead of,
It's like an extra bonus week. That's exciting. So I mean, I would entertain that, and maybe we can
Okay,
discuss that at the
that's
public
fine.
hearing, because I would be amenable to that. Like I said, we're not trying to make this difficult. We're just trying to do the right thing here. So, okay. Any other comments about, did I get the procedure right for the public hearing? Did anyone want to add anything to that? Okay. It is 7:15. I'm going to open up the public hearing. I would invite anyone to speak in favor of this proposal to come up to the podium and state their case.
My name is Frank Miller. I'm speaking in favor and support of this plan. I'd like also to speak very strongly about your decision about regional impact. One, all of the environmental issues of this whole plot, this whole area of land, as far as any impact to the environment, water systems, all that was already evaluated and processed by the appropriate people who do that. And this whole development was approved and this pad was pre-approved. So we knew that we were putting something there that was going to attract people. So the elements that you're using to determine a regional impact are something that should have been done and were actually addressed on the original application for the whole design out and the whole environmental impact and location. As far as the one particular issue, as far as traffic, we all recognize through our studies that are 20 years old that Route 25 is wholly under-designed for the existing traffic and other traffics that we know we have planned through studies of the Tenny Mountain Corridor study, and that the state who owns that has moved their timeline up several years, and which affects the board's decision in part of allowing and approving new businesses and new land uses to go in on Route 25. I think we're doing ourselves a disservice to say that this is a regional impact when in fact those issues were already pre-discussed and any elements were mitigated through design and permitting by the various agencies, and that the only thing we have outstanding is our pedestrian interface with this unit, and that the applicant can't comply because he doesn't own and control the elements necessary to make that design. And this is something we addressed with the Soldier On program up on Boulder Point when we had them reserve a piece of property for the sidewalk that they could be used and built on in the future. But as far as the permitting process for this, you can't hold an application up because of the owner, the state, has not seen, with their timeline has not moved forward to mitigate the issues of traffic conflicts, okay? So, once again, I think the decision for regional impact is inappropriate and not correct in this situation. We already knew this was coming. We already approved this whole thing.
Frank, I'm gonna pause you right here. We'd love to hear comments about the specific application.
Okay.
We've already made the decision about the development of regional
well-
impact. I appreciate your opinion,
Okay.
but,
Anyway, I just, because then everything that goes on 25 would then fall into that area, And if a new structure were to come out there, that should be part of the original application and not this far along where you're in a site plan review, not a subdivision or the original use of this property. This is a site plan review of something that's already been permitted. So I think we've really got this process mixed up. Thank you.
And I would remind everyone that the decision that was made about the regional impact has been made, so please try and keep your comments about the site plan review, so.
Well, I think they kind of both go together a little bit. You guys talked about Russ Harris, Harris Family Furniture. Whether it was the last planning board meeting or a work session or the planning board meeting before, you guys had discussed about having a meeting about regional impact. So I'm kind of surprised that you guys didn't already address that before this meeting. But anyway, I do speak in favor of the Market Basket coming in. I think it's going to be great for the area. It's going to be great for jobs in the area. They've done a really good job as far as doing the setup and the site over there. So as far as there are a couple other things that were mentioned were lighting and stuff like that. I live as the crow flies in Campton, basically straight up behind up on Beach Hill. And as far as light pollution from other businesses, the Walmart and the McDonald's that went in, everything is, my light pollution is all down here, whether it's the college or whatever. I get almost none from Walmart or the McDonald's. So I mean, I think they've done everything that they can, and I think it'd just be really, I think it'd be really good for the area, and I don't see, I know I'm not supposed to say that, but how it's going to affect the regional impact, and I just think that should have been addressed before. Thank you.
So as a board, I'll just address that quickly. As a board, we need to address the development of regional impact when it comes to us as a completed application, which is this evening. I was going to say one more thing about that. We'll just keep going. Anyone else speaking out in favor of this application? Bonnie?
Well, I'm very much in favor of it, as you all know. And as far as, and I know you've already decided regional impact, which I don't believe it is, but I've got to say that right up front. And I just don't know, when did Market Basket start with their application with us? Was it way before I got involved here, or?
Tonight.
This is the first
Okay, okay, when's the first time that they spoke of coming here?
The first time we saw anything from Market Basket was when they came for a preliminary non-binding discussion. I believe that was at our last public hearing at the end of October.
Right.
Okay.
So that was the first discussion we've had about.
And where you're declaring this a regional impact, how far back, or what problems is this going to cause Market Basket from going ahead with their plans? I mean, I'm sure they've got different people ready to do this, this, and this.
So I don't really want to, I don't really want to address this because we've made this decision. And I will remind everyone that it is very common for towns to take more than one public hearing to get through an application. As I said, I've been on the board for 4 years. This is the largest application I've seen come before the board. It's in our best interest to take this slowly and make sure we're doing everything correctly. We're dotting all our I's, crossing the T's, we're doing everything correctly. And I do welcome everyone's input. I'm really not interested in being scolded on a decision that's been made.
No, that's
so,
not what
yeah,
I'm
so-
doing. And I am here I'm a resident. I'm a tax-paying resident. My taxes are way too high. I would like to see more businesses come in, and I would really hate to have them say, oh my God, you don't want to go into Plymouth because look at what they did with Market Basket. It was this, this, and this. And I'm not saying this to you as a board member. I'm just saying this as I would if I wasn't on the board.
Our
I
job
have a fear of this.
Right, and I totally hear that, and That's why we're glad you sit on this side of the table during
Are
other
you really?
discussions.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bonnie. Anyone else want to speak in favor? Oh, sorry.
I'm Calvin Huckins, and I'm from Holderness, and our land was flooded all the time by the Baker and the Bemmy. So I know about the, outside impact. It also flooded South Plymouth and Ashland territory. I have a cousin who owns frontage there. We owned a half mile of frontage, my dad and I. So, but that is past. But we're going to see lots and lots of people, and this lady may be able to save enough money on her groceries to help her pay her taxes.
Mr. McGinley?
I would just like to say that,
Do you mind just, sorry. A lot of people tonight.
just a very brief comment so we can move on. I believe it was the summertime of 2013 that I appeared before the board at that time, represented by Steve Smith, and conceptually came in with a site plan encompassing a large building. We always called it a large building. Market Basket and I have shared 6 years of communication to get to this point. So I'm disappointed. I don't think it's regional, but I respect the fact that you want to continue on. But it has been at least 5 years, 6 years that this matter has been out in the public view. It has been in the paper recently. If there's anybody here that is in opposition from other communities, they need to come up now. If not, then the proof's in the pudding. Thank you.
I'm actually from Romney, not Plymouth, but it affects all the surrounding towns, as some of you know. He's right. We have been hearing about this for a long time. I used to work as a field rep and travel the whole state. I heard at least 5 years ago about a Market Basket coming to Plymouth. And it's taken all this time. Why? I understand they had some issues that they fixed. Why are we waiting so long for this? I'm an avid Market Basket shopper. Maybe I'm prejudiced. But I don't like traveling all the way down there when I don't have to. It'll take me 10 minutes to get to the store instead of an hour, because I despise Hannaford's, and I'm sorry if somebody in here owns Hannaford's or has stock in it. That's my opinion. I think we need to get moving with this. It's been going on too long. My opinion.
I think that's exactly what we're doing.
Let's move along. Jim Meyer.
Anyone else want to speak in favor of this application? Anyone want to speak in opposition to this application? Anyone want to speak of a general nature about this application? All right.
I move to accept the application as complete.
I think we've done that.
We did.
Yep,
Okay.
we did, already done that, yep. I'm gonna, let's see. So, no other comments from the public, because I'm gonna close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. Okay. It is 7:29, and I'm closing the public hearing. Steve, I hear you have some questions.
I have a couple. I don't know if we want to go sheet by sheet with Will. I don't know if others have questions. It's more just if there's anything that the board thinks that they have time where they could actually address some of these things. So I
Yeah.
wanted to give them a heads up. And thanks for the sidewalk.
That was for you.
So one of my questions relates to the landscaping plan is really complete, but it relates to screening. And actually, some of my students from Plymouth State are here today, and we actually used this in class today, so thank you, along with the site plan regs. And one of the students pointed out in our site plan regs a requirement for buffering. And I wonder about the backside, the north side of the parcel, which is 4 feet taller, we heard tonight, where the trucks and the compactors are. And I don't know if there are any abutters across the river that would be able to see into the site, or if it's that far away from the river that it would not be an issue. But I just wanted to raise that. That was the only screening issue that we saw. I just wanted to raise that as a question.
Yeah, it's 4 feet lower, higher.
So the building is 4 feet taller.
Right.
As a result.
I mean, I suppose, yeah,
and then on top of the bank as well, right?
Yeah, and there's about, I think, 500 feet
That
between.
far? Okay.
It's, what's the environmentally sensitive zone? Is it 400 or 500?
500.
So it's 500
500
feet from
feet.
the river.
Okay.
So there's quite a bit of space in there.
So I just wanted to raise that. I didn't know if, Chris, do we want to talk about the ability to get permission for a trail in that 500-foot area?
I mean, the Conservation Commission would love that. Some kind of egress at some point, because it would be nice to have a linear park, I guess, along the river. So it'd be nice to have some kind of access points. But I have no proposal for that. And I know you discussed it, we discussed this the last time you were here. And
Right.
I don't know if you came up with anything.
Right. I mean, I guess that's going to be something that Mike would have to decide about in concert with the rest of the landowners there, because it's not just.
Yeah.
I mean, he does own that one large parcel, but there's obviously the other ones around that would be impacted by that. I mean, the other thing, we looked at it a little bit, and I mean, the challenge is the way that the site's set up is how would you get down there, right? We have this one-to-one stone line slope around the entire perimeter of the pad. So that's one challenge that I looked at right away, and I was like, I'm not sure how we could even get folks down safely to that portion of the river. The other thing is it's a floodplain compensation area, so it's kind of it's a big grass pool. I mean, I suppose you could get access in terms of getting a boat in, but in terms of walkways, I don't know if you're going to have
And I guess, we'd have to look at that and see if it's viable, but I guess my question the last time was, would you be open to that? And it sounds like you are, or,
Well.
at least discussing it, so.
John?
I understand where we're all at. I was on the planning board back when, and I failed to bring it up, and that was my fault. But when Lowe's was approved, it was not considered a regional impact. But these kind of things with Lowe's, I mean, Lowe's was prepared to do a lot of things, but it should not be conditional on this. We didn't put it on Fairfield, we didn't put it on McDonald's or Bank of New Hampshire, and I don't think that should be something, discussed or hinging in any way on our decision and, site plan approval. I just think if it's something that happens in the future, Market Basket's part of it, I think that's fine. But, we didn't do this with Fairfield or the others. We weren't going to do it with Lowe's, but Lowe's had a lot of things they were going to do had they came in. But it was not a condition of approval. It wasn't something that they were required to do. And so, I think, my personal opinion, it shouldn't be involved in this discussion. It's been mentioned, they're aware of it, and you know, if it's something they decide to do afterwards and get something worked out, that's fine. But I don't think it should be a condition of approval or anything like that.
Stormwater. So the stormwater plan appears to be the same as when we had the conceptual review.
Similar, yeah.
Okay, so no changes in how you can handle peak volume or integrate the landscaping with the stormwater?
Right, not with the parking requirements. No, we were basically sticking with the same underground chamber system.
This parking requirement is in excess of what the zoning requires, right?
It is.
By how many spots?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but I know that it's based on what Market Basket uses for all their. It's actually less than what they usually would like to see.
Okay.
What does DES say about your parking plan and the impervious surfaces?
Well, I mean, Alteration of Terrain has approved the various iterations of what we do. I mean, we're complying with all their rules for sure. I mean, they offer different alternatives for the stormwater management. On commercial sites, this is almost always our approach if the separation to seasonal will accept it. So the fact that we have a built-up pad here gives us a big pocket of land underneath the parking lot to deal with all this stormwater, and so it's typically the most efficient approach on a site like this. So that's how we landed here.
Oh, hang on a second. Please continue.
Yeah. I was finished, but
Okay.
I think it's not a public hearing.
It's not a public hearing. But at the discretion of the chair, I can recognize you, so please go ahead.
I believe that on Google, we got that your parking space would hold 324 cars.
That's correct. That's how many this one.
That's what it says on my sheet right here.
This one.
Right.
And the building itself is 69,000 square feet.
Correct.
Correct in that information?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You mentioned the treatment mechanism for the water quality treatment. Can you just talk about that a little bit? Because I don't think this is something that some of us have seen.
Sure.
And what the maintenance protocol or any of that?
Yeah, so it's like it's a manufactured product. It's a cartridge filter essentially. So comes into an initial chamber within it. It's a big tank, underground tank, has various chambers in it. I think there's 3 total. Comes into the first one, then goes over a concrete weir, and it goes in through these this cartridge media that essentially is used for pre-treatment for things like hydrocarbons, total suspended solids, that kind of stuff. Typical stormwater pre-treatment, and then it heads into the chamber system, which basically fills up and then over time gets into the ground, back into the aquifer. So
Where is it? Where is it on the plan? Is it between the 2 infiltration basins in that big lot?
So the pre-treatment unit?
Yeah. Is it right there? Okay, that's what we wanted.
That's all the shaded.
And this, we are probably gonna be able to shrink the size of what we're showing there a little bit because we were kind of conservative with our initial layout. But we're working towards that final design for AOT now.
Okay.
No questions?
And along those lines too, in terms of stormwater, I know that's something that was brought up in the previous hearing was salt, and so we did look into that a little bit. And Mike actually uses a Green Snow Pro certified maintainer. So that was one of the things I was going to suggest to him, is that maybe we should do that. And he's like, "Oh, I already do." So it's I mean, I have information on it if you're interested. I know that was something the board was concerned about, but it's a program that DES sponsors that basically somebody goes through a training and then they can apply lower levels of salt and sand, and it reduces the liability on the landowner. If they have this certification, they can apply less. Essentially, like, people are afraid not to over-apply on sidewalks because somebody's going to slip and fall, so this allows them to apply a certain type of better, more environmentally friendly salt and also apply a little less of it. So.
That's great, because there aren't that many Green Snow Pro operators up in this area, not as many as there are in southern New Hampshire, so that's great.
Yeah.
We've had a couple of other, probably been 8 or 10 years ago when I was on the planning board. I think Tractor Supply used this type of drainage and water retention and seepage. So it's been successful on 2 or 3 applications that we've had with the town in the past. So it works very well.
I think dealing with the salt issue is something that is a new and upcoming issue, so, and
Well,
the detention doesn't necessarily
No,
take care
no,
of
but
that, so.
I think then the filter system catch a lot of that when it's setting, that it settles or something. I think
Well, salt is a difficult.
Okay.
It's
All right.
very soluble, so the pretreatment that we're proposing won't really get it out.
Okay.
But that's why the method is to basically apply less of it. It's kind of the
So not
preventative
treat.
measure.
That's great.
I don't know if it was considered doing porous pavement in the parking lot. It's in the site plan regs as an option, and you can apply even less salt if you have a permeable pavement, according to the Green Snow Pro standard. I don't know if that was ever considered. Obviously, you wouldn't want to do that in the infiltration basins,
Right.
but.
Yeah. I don't think it was. The challenge with the pervious pavement is the maintenance, right? So you have to, if you don't own a vacuum truck, you got to rent one once or twice a year and clean it out. And because inevitably, if you don't put salt, you're going to put sand.
Right.
And or you're not supposed to put sand, but if if any sand gets in there, then it doesn't function properly. So, I mean, the pervious pavement is well intended, and we use it in residential applications, but in high traffic areas like this, we found it causes long-term maintenance issues, and so that's why we hadn't really considered it on this site.
Any other questions?
No, I'm sorry, I had an itchy head.
I will bring up too, we got a letter from Mike Vignali yesterday, or I think it was 2 days ago, with some comments that we can address. So essentially, I mean, I know in the past we've kind of handled it that way, and we've gone through it with him. I wasn't able to get a hold of him today by phone, but we can address all of his concerns and.
Can we see that letter?
Yes. I didn't make copies for everybody because it was kind of late to the party, but
I have
I can
copies.
get them to you.
That'd be great.
Oh, you have copies of
Well,
both?
I have
of them?
copies, so I have our response letter essentially, so
Oh,
it
good.
has Mike's comments along with
Okay, good.
our sort of responses to those comments.
Brian, this has been distributed to the town departments and no feedback from, usually don't you?
There was no comment from the police department or fire, and highway reserved. Their comment was that the sidewalk maintenance in the winter would have to be continued by private parties because just getting our tractor over there would be problematic. Besides, it's not a town road.
So the only reason, I know you guys are just reading this now, the only reason I brought it up is just that if there's anything, I guess I wanted to make everyone aware that it was out there and that we would respond to it. And I don't know if there's an opportunity to respond between now and the next hearing. I don't know what the time frame is for providing you with a revised plan. Do that.
It would be helpful for us to maybe look through this.
Not a whole lot is going to change. I mean, I guess the thing is, and we will provide obviously a final plan for the alteration of terrain permit, and then we'll be providing as-built and all sorts of documentation to Brian as the project goes to construction. So.
But yeah, I think we would like to see the engineer's comments reflected into the plan, I think is that what you're asking?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
We can do that.
Okay, with that, unless there's other questions from the board or comments, I want to talk about changing or opening up continuing the public hearing to our next work session on December 6th, which is somehow 3 weeks away, not 2 weeks away. So, but first I want to make sure the board is okay with that. That's not something we always do, but if we're amenable to that, I don't know why we wouldn't. But then I also want to check with Brian and make sure that that's not an undue burden on you to get the notices out to abutting towns.
It's basically a form letter. I'll just pick all the municipalities and the boards of selectmen, or whatever contact information we have.
And
So it's probably 5 letters.
And to the LRPC.
LRPC, they go out certified. That would be out by noon tomorrow.
Okay.
The other thing I think that's relevant to bring out here, that the comments by the other municipalities are non-binding, which hadn't been broached at this point, so.
Non-binding mean that they can say all they want and we don't,
The board does not have to take up any of it.
Right. Thank you. Okay, so then we need to make a motion to continue the hearing to a date certain on December 6th.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does the board need to see, I don't know if we need like paper copies, 8 paper copies of all the changes, as long as they're in when you come back in 3 weeks. I don't think that we all need paper copies, so
Okay.
save the paper.
Great.
All right. Next up.
Can I just say about this, like, there's a lot here, and Will did a nice job, as usual, addressing the comments we got, but, like, we need to review this, so I'm glad you brought it tonight, thank you. Because there's stuff here about looking at the traffic numbers and other things, so.
DOT did quite an extensive study when we had Lowe's and that.
Yeah, but they're saying that they're gonna provide a copy of the traffic impact and site access study prepared by Steve Pernaw. We don't have it. So this is one of the reasons why we sometimes need more than one meeting.
You do have one, by the way. You've seen it before, but.
But do we have it? Does the planning board have it?
It's been a part of the application for previous. For the urban, it was part of the application.
Okay.
Anyway, we'll get them all that information again.
All right. So new administrative business, presentation to the board of legislative calendar timeline, about zoning amendments. Assuming that's,
And there it is, Madam
oh,
Chair.
so I'm supposed to. All right.
No, that was included in your packets.
Yep. So we are open for business as far as zoning ordinance amendment petitions. according to this. So we'll need to post and publish, I don't have our calendar for next year. So Thursday, January 10th. Is this like the state calendar?
Correct.
Okay.
It's all, they determine it by counting backwards from
Yep.
the town meeting.
Okay, so Thursday, January 10th, which is the third, that's the third or second? Okay. I think my mind is fried now, I apologize.
The 10th is the second.
Second, okay, sorry.
Third is the first Thursday.
All right, so we've got to hold our first public hearing by the 21st of January, which is, so it's got to be either our work session in January or an additional, because I don't think we're going to, either we're going to get to it by December 20th, or not.
Sometimes depending on what we have, we have special, and what we could do is move up the one from the 14th or 15th to the
Yep.
to the 10th, and
Yep.
then.
No, we can move
Is-
dates around this.
Would the Thursday before that Monday of the 21st be the third Thursday of the month? I don't have a paper calendar to look at.
I was just trying to follow what you said.
Again, we're counting backwards from town meeting.
Yeah.
No, the Monday is the last day to hold a public hearing, but there are, in the previous week, I was wondering where that particular Thursday fell on the
Oh,
planning board
that is probably going to be
calendar.
the third.
Yeah.
that will be the
it
third
is
Thursday.
Thursday the 3rd.
Okay.
Okay,
And then Thursday the 10th, and then the 17th
so,
is a regular. Third and
That
the
could be the
17th.
first public hearing.
so let's have our first public hearing on our public hearing, the third Thursday.
Which would be the 17th.
17th, thank you.
That's January 17th? Right?
Yes.
The only thing we're taking a slight risk of is if we get walloped with a whole bunch of applications. But it's January.
Right.
Yeah, it's
So.
January, and, it hasn't been a popular thing in past years to come up, so.
I mean, yeah. Okay, so the second public hearing will then has to be before. Oh. First public meeting, when is the last day for the second public meeting?
It doesn't show one. Well, let's see.
It'd be 10 days if it followed the regular.
If a second
notice
public
calendar.
hearing is anticipated 14 days prior to the last date to hold a public hearing.
So we just we would continue the hearing
Yeah, it said.
on the 17th.
Yeah, because it says January, looks like it would have to, second would have to be by the January 24th? No, February 5th.
So the 24th is the last day to post the notice for final planning board public hearing.
So it looks like it'd be February 5th,
Okay.
yeah, for the
So-
second,
Maybe we'll just hold February 5th as the
second if needed.
continuance, the continued public hearing, if needed.
Oh, that's Tuesday.
So we'll need to have these dialed in and ready to go by,
The new year.
okay.
I would think that gives us 17 days prior to
Does
that.
that give time for town council to review the wording and things like that?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, it should be fairly easy. And if, it seems that the sense of the board that I've got is that we're going to hold a second public hearing whether there's anybody there or not. So we could post that noticing for the first hearing. And then, that
Yeah.
right away, we could immediately, schedule it and post it once, because it would meet the notice requirement
Right.
still, even though it's a little bit further ahead of time than people.
That's great. It sounds like that makes less work for you too, if you can just post it once. Okay. So we should probably look through this stuff then, that Brian had some suggestions for zoning amendments based on what you've heard and what you've seen. Do you want to, I'm sorry, I'm fully melted down after the public hearing, so, I think, do we want to, yeah.
Would you like me to read them to you, Madam
Could
Chair?
you just describe them to us?
Okay.
Yeah.
Starting on the first page, we had, in conjunction with the Market Basket Project, there was another application for directly across the street, which was withdrawn because of other issues. It was brought forth there that if you have, the sticking point was having more than one main structure on a lot per our zoning. In developing, and this board has the sense of more concentrated activities. So essentially what you have is you would need 2 lots to do 2 projects, whereas if you, and you still possibly could. I mean, all other things being equal, all the aerial requirements that we have in the zoning and everything else. The only thing I would like to strike, in essence, is the restriction for the second main structure in commercial applications. There's economies of scale that get built in. There's less impervious surfaces. You don't have to worry about interior setbacks, thereby gaining up to 60 feet between your buildings, and things of that nature. And I would say it would still be, some very strict parameters of where it would occur, and then it would push it back to a special amendment or a special exception use rather than a variance for things that lie outside what the board determines is necessary for that.
So right now, what?
Because I think that the idea, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
You're fine, go ahead.
I think the idea of the one main structure on the lot was a reactive against residential uses in the village. And that since the zoning ordinance predates development on Tenny Mountain Highway to a great extent, I think they're kind of under the shadow of that, which works well in the village, but it doesn't address new construction.
So currently, to have 2 buildings this is in the along Tenny Mountain Highway, and that's what the.
That is where we're developing.
Yeah, that's the ICD there.
Right.
Right? The.
ICD and A.
They need a special exception to have 2 buildings
Yes.
on one site.
For any use that requires more than one main structure.
Brian, if you could clarify for me, I believe that was residential and not applicable to
No,
commercial?
it's not defined. Had it not, they did allow commercial, then I wouldn't have proposed this, but it's across the board.
So in what this most recent development that we're looking at, I'm just using this as an example, is they're not combining parking, they're not they're essentially operating like they are on 2 separate
Correct.
lots.
The only
More
difference
curb
is that
cuts.
there's actually 2 structures on that one
Right.
parcel.
So I guess the nature of this cluster development, I would think that if they're cooperating and collaborating, that seems like a great idea, but if it's essentially just trying to put 2 buildings on one spot that are effectively operating independently, I feel like that's a different thing, so.
Well, it boosts, visitation. It'll be easier to interconnect with them. And essentially, we have the same thing in the strip malls already, except they don't own their own building.
Right.
So, I mean, socially, it's an acceptable use. It's just that it's a peculiar requirement in our zoning that it didn't make the distinction between residential and commercial.
I think it's great. I thought it was great when I saw this, even before I saw Thunder Road and Easy Street. I appreciated that.
Got it.
Um, I'm just wondering about the word cluster,
Well,
because.
that's why I put it in scare
Okay,
quotes.
good. Just because if there's not an open space piece, it may be confusing people, or they may assume that there's an open space requirement. Could it be commercial co-location, like you said, or
like I said,
coordinated
I just
commercial
grabbed that because
development?
it essentially nutshells the concept.
I think it's great, and I think, like Chris said, it also, you can reduce curb cuts. There's a lot of efficiency for the developer. So I think we should allow for that kind of coordination.
I agree.
Who writes the amendments? Are we supposed to write them ourselves?
It's Brian's job.
Essentially, I mean, you know, I'll give it to you in a draft and you guys can do it, or it can come down from you, either way. I mean, you make the ultimate decision, so
Right, right.
I don't get any credit for it if I do, if you're.
Brian could designate it
How's that?
to his assistant.
The next one is do you want me to continue, Madam Chair?
I don't know. Do we want, is there a general agreement that we would like to adopt or to pursue this as a zoning amendment?
Yes.
All right, great.
I wasn't seeking that tonight, but.
I mean, I think it's good to,
Okay.
yeah, and then we can get
Get working on it.
get Brian working on it.
Okay, the other one is the residential setbacks. And, oops, my drawing got messed up there.
Clearly, I'm
See,
ready for
I
Easy Street.
got this from Ben Frost. It came up on Plan Link some time ago. I think it makes perfect sense, especially in older communities, where you essentially grant those existing structures, the pre-existing non-conforming ones, that is the setback line. Obviously, there would have to be a little bit more definition. The number of properties where the buildings are actually in the dedicated street, so we wouldn't want them to encroach any closer. You know,
Like
but
anywhere
in
towards
a
the
standard
median?
yard, any regular old yard, you know, and the house that's built in the 50s, it's 20 feet from the road at the most. And it's built, you know, in two boxes that are offset. So it would enable people to fill in that L without seeking a variance to get to the setback. You know, and it's fairly self-explanatory in this. You know, if you go beyond it, it's still variance. If you hold to the existing front line of the building, it becomes a special exception, or, yeah, I think that should be dropped. There still needs scrutiny on it, just to get these outliers, you know, weeded out. But the burden is a lot less for a special exception than it is for a variance, though a lot of cases like this can be approved because the hardship is the pre-existing nature of the building compared to, you know, what the zone overlay afterwards.
Do you see this as something that just like on existing structures?
Yes,
So-
only
and-
existing
and not
structures.
new structures?
Correct.
Okay.
No, you still, all things being equal, you know, well, first of all, they wouldn't get a building permit if they were violating the front setback. So this allows people to actually do infills in the staggered nature of their home, if it makes sense to them. I mean, you know, rather than put a whole addition on, if you just needed 6 feet in your kitchen to be happy, and the only place you could go out for it was to the existing front line of the building, which happens to be non-conforming, that's going to save you a lot of money in the long run and probably more efficient in your home.
So if I live on Easy Street and my house is actually in the road, I can't build an ADU further out into the road?
Correct.
Okay,
No ABU.
yeah.
But Easy Street is clearly in a commercial area.
Yeah.
I think it's
The
great.
commercial cluster, I'm sorry. Jeez. Yeah. Okay, I see, I was on the wrong page altogether, all right. What does everyone think about this zoning amendment?
Makes sense.
Makes sense.
It's good.
All right, so finally, the manufacture of goods sold on premises.
At the very least, I would like to see bakeries and print shops removed from the prescribed list. I think that we should also go where, if it's recombinant food items, they should be exempt.
Can we just remove this prohibition of manufacturing? Is there a
Well, you know, I thought
downside?
of that, but then, you know, what if somebody, you know, with the technological change, would come in with, you know, say you could manufacture chemicals in a very small footprint that would release possibly noxious odors or light or anything like that. I think that that's what they were going against for the downtown. You know, and I agree and disagree at the same time.
Right,
Just because
no,
we do
yeah.
have to provide some protections against those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So if we just made the list of what you can't do instead of, you know, things including, at least straighten it out so much so you could say, you know, that, yes, you know, you're brewing beer. Well, in this state, you have to do it in a restaurant. So why would you not do that? And certainly a major bottler would not locate in the Village Commercial District of downtown Plymouth when Tenny Mountain Highway is right there to develop with the big, you know, bottling plant, for example. You know, those things, you know, really bothered me because everybody loved the bakery and everybody went to the print shop, which has been in the same location since before I moved here. And I still refer to it by its old name. At that point, it was not, I don't want to, you know, cast aspersions on anybody, but it seemed like there was an awful lot of self-interest in excluding those two things particularly in this.
Okay, so in the uses, it says management, including bake.
So Brian, should we be thinking of other?
Think of things you
Similar
absolutely
things.
would,
Yeah.
you know, wouldn't like there, or things that you would like to see. So, I mean, if we made a broad enough list, and of course you can't think of everything, but then again, the board determines similarity in zoning issues. So, you know, there's enough scrutiny on it, I think, even if it was wide open. But, you know, because obviously if you're going to put a bottler downtown, it would come to site plan review.
Right.
So there are eyes on all these activities anyway. Any new commercial activity is going to come before the board.
Right.
So, you know, why have them take that extra step if it's something as minimal as a bakery,
Right.
which we don't have.
It's true, but now there's a brewery.
I don't drink.
Yep.
Thanks a lot.
Yeast.
Right.
They do have some bread there.
Oh, okay, good. So, I mean, these are kind of just spitballed ideas that I put into coherent form.
So I
know they
think
need work.
what might make sense is, I think these first two, if you could sort of boil those down into some coherent, not
Do
that
you
they're
want me
not.
to put it into amendment form for you?
Yes.
Madam?
That would be great.
Yeah, so I didn't mean to imply that this was not coherent.
This was
Okay.
educational.
Yes.
And Brian, are you cool with doing that by yourself, or do you want?
Well, I'm going to bring it all back, and I could
Okay.
probably shoot it out, you know, to the chair, or, you know, I think we meet often enough that I could bring it up by the next meeting, probably. I mean, those two are pretty easy to write.
But I think this manufacture of goods sold on premises, I think that's something that we all kind of need to brainstorm, like,
I agree.
it's, you know, as much as I'd like to say, okay, we'll just take it out as requiring a special exception, but I want to make sure we're not being short-sighted and not thinking about some type of manufactured goods that we would not like, I guess, manufactured goods sold on premises that we would not like to see manufactured in the downtown area, so.
It should be a very short list. I mean, there's not many folks that manufacture things
Right.
and sell. But what if a potter wanted to locate down there? They're actually, you know, mixing clay, they're throwing it on the wheel, they're, you know, they have a kiln, there's very high temperatures, so granted, you know, there's other entities that look at that, but, you know, is there a noxious component to a potter? You know,
And it's,
I don't
we
really
have
know.
that on Main Street. They just don't sell on the premises, but that kiln and time, you know, they
Right,
have
but
a
they're
kiln.
not, they're
they
not
have-
really manufacturing the pot, those are already pre-made. So
Right,
all
but
they're doing is
yeah.
firing the glazings on
But
those.
the most noxious parts.
It's still there.
Is still there,
Yeah.
right? So,
But-
but just they're not selling it on, it's just kind of a weird,
Personally, I haven't noticed anything emanating from that building.
I don't think you
I mean,
would,
it's
yeah.
overridden by the smell of pizza in that location.
Pizza you got, right?
But, which I think is kind of your point, is that that would be something that we could allow.
I mean, if they actually did the
Yeah.
throwing of pots there,
Yeah.
or hand building, then you could allow that.
And that's sort of proof that,
Yeah, so I think we just need to kind of brainstorm, like, is there something that we would not want to see manufactured?
Yeah, do you want to put it in the positive or the
Well, I like
punitive way?
I like what you said. You kind of, implied like a performance standard. Like it shouldn't have, if you're mixing chemicals, it shouldn't have an adverse impact on the neighbor or the community at
Yeah.
large. And I wonder if we could come up with a statement that would just say that. So we don't have to think of every potential use, but we'd allow people to be creative and industrious and just not negatively impact others. And then we have site plan, like you said,
Right.
as well.
So to be clear about intent as opposed to trying to
Right.
come up with this laundry list.
and don't we already have ordinances against noxious emissions and noise?
Oh, it's
and
in,
all those
it's in
things?
all the zoning regs. I mean, to get a special exception or a variance, it has to have like zero or minimal impact outside the bounds of the business or home.
Is that not enough to give us control over manufacturing that?
I think just being clear about
But that's
what-
only if they go to a special exception or a variance. Otherwise, if it's an approved use, you're just gonna walk in and open the doors. Other than fortunately, there's nothing like that in town, so it would all be change of use at this point. So all
also
of
a-
those would come
Site
before the
plan.
board.
It's also a special exception in the ICD too.
The manufacturer of goods, and that was probably to restrict the big, the
Yep.
brake factory,
So,
the
I think
tire
that-
recycling facility.
right. Where they recycle tires and make toys for children or something.
Yeah, Huaraches and road
Yeah.
surfaces. And
So I think we need to look at that and see, does this need to be something specific to like the village commercial or like downtown manufactured goods sold on premises? Is that different than what manufactured goods sold on premises? Are there two different things happening? So if we make the change for the downtown area, does that apply to the other areas in town as well?
I think it should.
Yeah.
I don't know why we would exclude the other commercial areas from having the same flexibility as long as they're not negatively impacting in a butter.
Okay.
I mean, because what if the bakery or the brewery or whatever wanted to locate in one of those other areas outside of the
Right,
village
right.
commercial zone because of their size or because of their bottling capability or whatever?
And there's a certain amount of gloss on that anywhere because, Hannaford and Walmart bake.
That's true.
And they
Right.
sell them right there. It may have been something that was really different back when the zoning was written. But now it's become practical and common. Which is also part of the whole zoning thing too. You got to recognize that it goes on.
So I shouldn't even say this, but does this mean that something like Market Basket needs a special exception to be able to sell their baked goods on premises?
I would look the other way,
Yeah.
to be honest with you.
But yeah.
Because
But it's just
a
that-
lawsuit
yeah.
waiting to happen and a big one that
Yeah.
we're going to lose.
Right. So it's just, I mean, obviously, it's a problem not just in the downtown area.
Correct.
That's what I'm saying.
I guess what I'm saying is, do we allow things that we wouldn't allow in the downtown area, in the, along Tenny Mountain Highway, that if we say something that doesn't produce certain smells that might, I don't know, odors, pollution, obviously we don't want those things, but are there different characteristics that would be acceptable in the ICD versus the,
That could be evaluated during the site plan process by whatever board is hearing, right?
yeah, I mean, I'm just raising that as a, do they need to be looked at differently if they're,
It would be nice to do it a blanket all across the town,
I agree.
but certainly, it should be considered. I'm obviously not advocating that for the residential districts.
Right.
Though you can't have a home occupation that's a tea room. That's prohibited.
you can't have a,
A home occupation, a tea room or a restaurant in your home.
Why not?
It's specifically outlawed in the zoning ordinance.
Really?
But also, I think it goes to traffic more than anything else. A lot
Right,
of traffic
okay.
in the residential zones at meal times.
Sorry, Chris. Any
have to
dreams
close
of
mine
a
down.
tea room in residential district?
What are you baking?
What's in those brownies?
So should we be proposing other zoning
By next meeting.
amendments by next meeting?
If you guys come up with them, that's fine too. Plus, there's citizens petitions that may come in as well. And
I
that's
think we did-
essentially what it's built around.
That deadline is passed, hasn't it?
It opened the 12th.
Oh,
did
it
not?
opened, okay, sorry.
So there was the word incidental in the environmentally sensitive zone. Would that be something that? Well, it seems like that caused confusion. That might be a nice thing to
I think
clarify.
that,
It was explained in great detail by the Supreme Court.
I think we don't want to touch the environmentally sensitive zone. That would be my recommendation. And specifically, when we were working on the master plan, I think what we ended up doing was pulling out the language about the environmentally sensitive zone and trying to get to its intent and try and think about what are we trying to do with that? And if wetland protection is something we want to do, think about something different that might protect wetlands.
Right.
So, yeah. So, I feel like, yeah. Yeah, I will.
Don't go down that road.
But I do feel like we've talked about, now that the master plan's done and adopted and all that, I think getting through these that you've been tracking for us and kind of sharing with us over the last year, I mean, after the first of the year, there's no reason why we can't start talking about implementing the master plan, start having bigger conversations. I don't know if that's where you're going as well, thinking about like, how do we start working on that? Have some work sessions.
Yeah, and I think what we talked about the last meeting was having our first work session of the year be our planning session for the year. So, because at that point we kind of have the idea of what we want for our zoning ordinances. We're still driving those forward, but that's the time when we look at all of our work sessions and plan out what we want to do. So,
That's great.
I didn't mean to shut you down about the environmentally sensitive zone, but
No, I was just, that was
was
one of the
hearing
things that came
incremental.
up when we were looking at the
Incidental.
master plan. So
how long do you want town meeting to be this year?
It'd be a ballot measure.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Well, and I think the problem was that I mean, it was ambiguous.
Right.
So we shouldn't have ambiguous language in our zoning ordinances.
I'm glad you said that, Chris. There was one more, and I knew I was forgetting something. In the table of uses in the zoning ordinance, we have indoor recreation.
Oh, that was,
So we have indoor/outdoor recreation is one. It's only permitted in the agricultural zone, the highway commercial zone, and the industrial commercial zone. Then you have indoor recreation, where it's a special exception in the agricultural. It's permitted in the village commercial. It's special exception in highway commercial and ICD, and it's variance uses in all the other zones, including the civic institutional. What I would like to do is don't do the indoor-outdoor. Get a definition for indoor, get a definition for outdoor, have two separate lines in the zoning for each activity, and take a real look at indoor recreation in the agricultural zone. There's a lot of building stock out there. Why are we making it harder for somebody to do indoor recreation, which by its very nature isn't apparent from the outside of the building?
yeah, like some sort of virtual reality.
Correct, which is coming back, by the way.
It is.
He's back downtown. He filed for the zoning board just this week.
So, yeah, so I think the same thing is we need those definitions, but they need to be broad to cover intent and less specific, because I feel like the zoning, right now, the definitions aren't they very specific?
And they're pretty, just the table of
Yeah.
use itself is a mixed message,
Yeah.
right? But, you know, if, in an otherwise, you know, if you're looking at a change of use, which indoor recreation would be in the agricultural zone, why send them to the zoning board too?
Right.
Because I'm talking about indoor, it could be ping pong tables, you know, that could come back, you know, like pool rooms used to.
Ping pong hasn't come back?
Well, I mean, as far as
on its way.
in large groups,
Gotcha.
everybody's got one in their house,
Yeah.
but, it used to be that you go to a place and rent a table, and, they had several there. Things of that nature, which, it's recreation, and it's indoors.
Yeah.
Why do you not allow it in a zone where you allow outdoor recreation? And you can see that sometimes, there would be the disparity between the uses, but, that's entirely in your laps.
Your comment is about the definitions.
Yeah,
Not about the definitions, but more about where it's a special exception. where it's-
It's unclear in the table just because there isn't a singular outdoor recreation line.
Okay. Oh, and it doesn't match the,
Correct. And there is no
Okay.
mission for indoor-outdoor recreation.
so we just need to fix those tables. And it seems, because we do have a definition for indoor recreation and a definition for outdoor recreation. So we just need to pull off the indoor before the indoor slash
Right.
and have outdoor recreation, indoor recreation, and just,
And I would like to see it as a permitted use
Okay.
in the commercial zones.
okay. Is that, can you add that to your,
Yes.
does that make sense?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
So if anyone else has any suggested zoning things, we should do it at our next meeting, our next work session. And I think at this time around is trying to get some minor corrections. I think it's too early, it's too late to get ahead of any big changes. And I think that's part of what we want to figure out in January, some of the big changes we want to see. I think our zoning
That would be
ordinance.
some of the master plan.
Exactly, yeah.
implementation,
I just think now it's just dealing with some confusing things that are kind of things we've butted our heads against just in the past couple of months, so,
Yes. And generally, the year in review brings us forward.
yeah. So,
If, I'd offer, if you have any suggestions that you'd like to get to the zoning board, get them to me, I'm there.
And they are still interested in a joint meeting,
Yes, very.
which would be a good thing on a work session if we could do it once we have an idea of the amendments, bounce it by them and see
Yeah.
if they have anything input on that as well.
would you be able to, I don't know if the zoning board's meeting in between now and our next work session, if there are any zoning board suggestions for the zoning, for any
Let's
zoning
see, the
ordinance
next
amendments?
zoning board meeting will be.
Fourth, I think.
Fourth.
So it doesn't give them a ton of time, so, but I don't know if you could reach out to them and just say, and if anything, anybody wants something, they have to have it ready to go as fleshed out as possible by the next meeting.
Okay. Yeah, I can tell to that regard.
Anything else from the board?
I would just like to say, I apologize because I was on the board when McGinley came, and Market Basket would have been here, in 2013, except for the internal disputes and all of that. And then they called it off because they had already approached the board. He had come with, the initial deal, and I didn't share that, and I should have, but.
Yeah, I thought it was a long, long time ago that
Well, it was, and people were very upset at that time that we didn't bring it in, and we had to explain, it was, the only reason they withdrew their application is they had to reorganize the company.
Right, I remember that.
And we've been working through Paul and other people for 4 years to get them to this point.
Yep.
So,
I think one of I see this as definitely I don't want to say a benefit, but the way we approach things with fairly fresh eyes, because we don't see all those internal workings, so when we look at it,
well, it wasn't internal.
well, I didn't know much about it,
Yeah,
so.
he came to, and
Yeah.
that's why I say, I
Yeah.
mean, that's what I should have done, because we've had this before, and when he mentioned it was back teen, I went,
Yeah.
Yep, I was on the planning board. I was on there from 2008 to 15, so.
I think that's okay, though, that you didn't share
Yeah.
that, because we
Well-
have to deal with the application that's presented tonight.
Well, right,
We have to
right.
treat
but I
everybody
mean,
the same.
People have
History.
and surrounding communities.
Sure.
Me being a select class, have been, when are we getting Market Basket? When are we getting Market Basket? We want Market Basket. I mean, when they started doing the gas station, Market Basket's coming. No, Market Basket's not coming. Well, you know, I have it on pretty privileged information. Basket is coming. I said, well, you know, you better change your information source because they're not, you know. So, anyway, so.
I think of the nature of the work we do and the nature of this board is things change and we all change and evolve and we all have to
Yeah.
look at everything with as fresh of eyes as we can. And-
Oh, exactly.
But that history is so important too, so it's good to have that mix of people
Yeah.
that sit through that, don't know much about it, but have that experience as well. And
Right, and that's one reason, you know, I got on this, because I served on it for 7 years through the through you, Mike, myself, a few recusal requests. But anyways, so,
but I think we're all just trying to make the best decision we can and, you
Yeah.
know, taking the time we need to do that, and I think that's good, so.
I think we should give these guys credit. We're used to Frank staying, but, you know, to have high school civic students hang out for 2 hours,
Wow.
Yeah.
get a gold star.
That's right.
Plus Elliot needs a ride home from me.
I've made the mistake of giving signatures out before the meeting, so I don't do that anymore.
They tried that at ZBA last Tuesday.
Yeah, no.
And they were said, you gotta wait.
Is there anything else from the board?
I have a question.
Yes.
So the date for the meeting is taking place on our work session?
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Which, yeah,
It's the 6th.
yeah, there's 3 weeks between, which is,
So there should be plenty of time to get that, and
Three.
if you get any comment in. Oftentimes, they'll supply it in writing instead of coming.
so our the first Thursday of the month was actually the 1st, so it's like getting a whole extra week.
Right.
Oh, wow. I got an extra week of my life.
Yeah.
Wow.
What we do.
No wonder you're tired.
Any comments from the public?
Hi, guys.
Besides Frank.
First, I'd like, three subjects. One is the indoor-outdoor. I think what would be very helpful is the North American Industry Classification System gives a very good definition and listing of those indoors and out businesses that you can look at and list and get an idea of that it has a statement of what the industry is. And why that's important is when a company, an individual applies to the state for a business, for an indoor or an outdoor, they do so with that industry classification number. And that's important because when they come to the town to get a permit, the design criteria has to meet the International Building Code, for which you're a signature of, and the life safety and fire code. And so their insurance package is based on the compliance with those specifications. So we've had instances where our zoning ordinance was not working well with the codes and standards, of which the permitting process non-helpful for an applicant. But anyway, a review of that indoor-outdoor recreational would give you a more defined definition of it, if you will. The other one I'd like to speak to about is the manufacturing, and I think you've touched on it, but we couldn't say it. But what you want to separate is any manufacturing that requires specialized OSHA or fire suppression equipment is something to be concerned about. In other words, that's why you have an industrial park. Elements that are manufacturer comes in and they're going to be producing something that needs unique setbacks by statute and or certain equipment for fire protection, suppression, use of chemical storage, this type of thing. So anything that is not requiring specialized OSHA, like breathing apparatus, dust collectors and all this, that you would have on Main Street, is something that you could say is allowed in the village commercial zone versus the industrial manufacturing be falling in that group where there's going to need special international building code requirements, life safety requirements, and fire codes. And the last subject I'd like to point out and discuss, and it needs to be something that we, in the next year, is what I call off-site mitigation. I would like to change that to off-application mitigation. And that request for access or use of a natural resource was not original one. We have the same thing on the Green Street program from 1995. We had the state's multi-use trail, which is stopped here at Plymouth and is desperate in leaning, connecting it to Bridgewater to make it a complete. This is the only part of that trail system that is not complete. We've had Walmart's, they were interested in doing something for pedestrian and other areas that was not part of the application, but they were agreeable to. Unfortunately, to get into a discussion of acknowledging something that they were willing to do, that needs to comply with some specifications of construction and or approval from the board. The application was put in, but that wasn't on the agenda item. So they don't have, if they have to have a license from DES, which if they wanted a trail system down in the mitigation area or to gain access to a river, that's a separate process. You need to go in to ensure that whatever you build is in accordance with any specifications that they deem necessary. But we still need a means of acknowledging that some of our big areas out that have access to unique parts of our environment, we would still like to be able in the future to see some way of getting there. And the problem is our process of permitting and everything, you have to come in with a pretty defined application to do that. But like to say, they're trying to get commercial structures on there, not recreational access to the river. So again, in our off-site mitigation program, there's been a lot of times when the various applicants have agreed to, yes, we would like to be part of it, and we would fund that, but we don't have any framework, or legal means to assist and allow that to happen. So what happens is, well, okay, we can't hold them to it, and we let it go. And we've done this, I'm going on 40, and so we're really not allowing the process of planning this in an orderly fashion, but then also our existing things that we've already designed and planned, like Green Street and up by the Boulder Point. It's like our master plan. It's a great idea, but it's good concepting. Implementation has been a little less than perfect. So that itself of the off-site or off-application mitigation program, I believe our ordinance does talk to about the capability of addressing that, but we need to form a committee. But the other two items of your and your manufacturing, your references in international building codes is a good reference point to read. And life safety codes and fire codes have all that listed out, so you don't have to work too hard on it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion.
I would second that.
All right, all those in
You don't
favor?
know what I was gonna.
That
Then we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're done.